You're reminding me a bit of Moynihan's Law. Someone just kind of brought this up in a recent interview I did. And Senator Patrick Moynihan, of course, Moynihan's Law is basically the more a country talks about human rights, the better the human rights are in that place.
Absolutely. And this is also proven scientifically.
Or complains about human rights.
Right.
The better the human rights are. And you have to think about it for a moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When as part of my official duty, responsibility, I always go around, tell diplomatic representatives, essentially repeating the same line as you eloquently quoted from someone that I revere. The societies that respect human rights, religious freedom, individual rights are much more prosperous and stable. The societies or governments do the opposite, end up buying themselves more trouble. And this has been seen time and time again. Of course, we're not perfect, but we have places to go to. We have ways to air our frustration, express our disapprovals, or even take matters to the court, seeking justice in some instances. I often use this example, as a U.S. official. I can criticize our president. I can criticize Congress, and I can go to Lafayette Park to organize protest, and no one is going to arrest me as long as I do it with approval within the parameter. But can you imagine a official who were in the Chinese government shows up in a Tiananmen Square, chanting one anti-China slogan, and you can imagine what. So this whataboutism is just the worst argument that people can put out.
We live in an era of censorship and disinformation, and it can be really hard to know what's true and what's false in this information climate. To get honest information and insights you can trust, join us on Epoch TV. You can sign up for your 14-day free trial at ept.ms/freetrialjan. That's ept.ms/freetrialjan. Well, okay, I have two thoughts here, right? But there does seem to be a kind of, weird, I'll call it weird admiration that certain Americans have for the Chinese system. Mm-hmm. And the case in point, and people have sort of debated, I've been seeing this for a while, but we're looking today as we speak, there's these massive lockdowns, of hundreds of millions of people in China. They did this, at the beginning of the pandemic, and all these Western countries, ostensibly free countries, threw out all their pandemic playbooks, which of course had nothing to do with lockdowns, and adopted Chinese Communist Party policies. I mean, bizarrely, and of course many of us stunned, didn't fully realize what was happening as this happened. But it's very clear that there was something changed, and somehow we decided that this Chinese Communist Party model of approaching a pandemic, for example, is the one we were going to do, and we're frankly watching it happen again.
I would add three more examples to what you were describing, that we are unwittingly becoming something that we are against, traditionally, historically, and societally. One, self-censorship. The people who criticize the CCP in today's environment, in the academic community, is almost non-existent, except for a few examples. So self-censorship. The other piece that is also very important, in China, I just mentioned about the business community. The Chinese business elites don't criticize their own government. And in our business community, they're just picked whatever is convenient for them. In the case of Coca-Cola, they're ready to criticize our government, but for the same using the same freedom, they never call out the Chinese government, the CCP, even though Coca-Cola were implicated in forced labor practices, even though Coca-Cola, one of the key sponsors of the Genocide Olympic in February 2022. And also there's another piece. So when you look at these practices, it's hard to make the distinction between some of the well-known business leaders, business elites in Silicon Valley, for example, from those tech elites in China. So what would differentiate their position? So they greed, their focus, laser focus on their economic interests, in a way making them almost like the Chinese tech executives. To me, that's very disturbing. And finally, Hollywood. The Hollywood is traditionally, in American society, very vocal when they see something not right. When was the last time that you see any serious Hollywood star criticizing CCP? You talk about lockdown. Even some of them even went further to pamper China for its mishandling of COVID better than us. So the American people need to wake up. What they see is not what they should be thinking of. This regime that we're dealing with is not really a government. It's controlled by a communist government, a communist regime, a communist party. Their domestic policy, their foreign policy, their economic policies, even the societal policies, all set by a communist party. So this normalization of this regime, thinking in a fanciful way, which proven to be a wrong approach in the last 30 years. A lot of people, even some reasonable, smart people, think that helping the Chinese regime with technology and education and finance, with investment, for example, would make them sound like us, talk like us, walk like us. But it didn't happen. So I think it's a time for the American public to stop playing whataboutism. We're doing the bidding for Beijing. And see what CCP is really about. We've seen it in Hong Kong, we've seen it in the Uyghur homeland, and now we're seeing it in real time in the Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So this naivete thinking, this short-sighted view that China could help in XYZ matters, I think is short-sighted.